A listener asked, how do you know what your basic psychic abilities are that you are not recognizing? And that's what we're going to talk about on this episode. We're going to look at 3 ways that you can uncover hidden psychic abilities. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe. And I am your host. My name is Trisha Carr. Welcome to this episode. I am very excited to be here with you. As always, I am not just saying that as a filler. I get really excited, really enthusiastic to connect with you. Now, we have folks who are here on the live, as this podcast, for the most part, is almost always offered live. I'm live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific, with some exceptions, sometimes life be lifing, but that's what our habit is. So I want to invite those of you who are here live to say hello and give me a shout to what you're doing here today, where you are from, and I will say hello today. Much love to everyone from Washington State. I love Washington. I love the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful. So welcome, Day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for those of you who are obviously watching in the replay or listening to the podcast version of this. Now, I want to share with you something that is time sensitive to invite you to it, and that is that there is a free manifestation masterclass happening today as I actually am broadcasting this now. Now, the thing is, check the link. If you're listening after the time, it's today at 4 Pacific, and but that's going to be a replay link as well. So you can catch the replay, and it's going to be amazing. I'll just tell you that right now. It's amazing, and it's going to be amazing because of you. So let me share with you, Spirit's telling me right now, share with how cool it is, how these things work. And here it is on the screen just to highlight it. But it's in the description, and now it's also in the live chat. The way this works is there will be people who come live, and their energy that will form the initial container for the energies that will come down into it. So for those who are able to come live, you actually have a surprise free gift coming. Not because, I don't love everyone, but that's just, I just want to give that incentive and that gratitude. So those who come live, we co-create this container that channels in the energy, the initial energy. Obviously, I initiated it on my own. I'm like a tiny seed, but then we all come together, we water it, we expand it. Now, then from that container of the live occurrence of it attracts others to it. Now, the interesting thing is that spirit, life, essence, your essence doesn't actually need the time of it, but there's this 3 tiers to the creation of it. It, of course, is me because I am starting it. Then those who come live create that foundation of the co-created container, and then their energy, all of our energy, attracts the others. Now, whoever in all time and space eventually come to it are present with it. We're working through the fluidity beyond time. We're breaking time. So it really is, I'm not even kidding. It is like time traveling if you watch it in the replay. And if you create it in the live, you're also time traveling to the future with those who are being magnetized to it on another, what we think of as timelines, but we're not working in time in the linear sense. We are allowing time to be our tool. We're allowing time to be something that we use. So there's a little something there for you. To get us started on today's energy. And we're going to get into our topic, which is all about how you recognize abilities, psychic or intuitive abilities that you may not know that you have activated. I'm going to talk about 3 primary ways, and there's going to be an activation for you to do on this actual episode, but also you can remember it and take it into your life and do it anytime. So here we go. So this comes from an audience question. How do you know what your basic psychic abilities are that you're not recognizing? And before I dive into that, I want to invite you to submit a question. You could do it by just commenting on any video, and I will feature it. You could also, if you're on my mailing list, as many people who come to this are, because joining my mailing list is the best way to stay on top of when these different events are occurring. If you're on my mailing list, then you can just reply to any mailer that I send out. I get those. Now, if you do that, then you're just going to want to let me know if you want me to shout you out with any name or tag or moniker or anything like that, and I will, or we could leave it anonymous. This one is anonymous. And, if you do it publicly on a comment board, then I'll shout it out that way because it's public already. And so, and to that effect, join my mailing list. The easiest or the best and the most, valuable way is check the description here, because there's at least 2 free gifts that you can get, and then it will sign you up for my newsletter. So there's like a free animal and nature intuitive mini course that's so great with teaching, exercises, meditations. There's also a higher self meditation probably there. And again, depending on when you're listening to this, I may have updated it and added something, or, it's something cool though. So check that out. Let's head into our question now. How do you recognize your unique psychic strengths that you may not be recognizing? Now, if you find through this episode that, okay, I recognized all of those, then I think that these will also be offerings to continue to expand, advance those particular skills, those particular natural abilities, because we're never done growing, are we? I hope not. All right. So I tapped in to answer this question, and it was actually Saint Germain who came in for me, who's been working with me a lot. Saint Germain is working particularly with my teaching, how I teach and how I guide, and is holding my ascension seat for me in Mount Shasta. Little sneak peek of what we're actually going to talk about later today. Anyway, so and the first answer is, they said, we first ask that you play within your own energy and release expectations. It's more fun and a straighter path to this uncovering to do it in this way. And so what this is asking for us to do is, the third way that I'm going to tell you how you can tap into this is actually really sort of pretty practical. You just look something up and there it is. It's like for you in black and white, well, in red and, some other colors. But basically, it's something you can look up. But before you even go there, if you haven't already done this third thing, then they want us to be much more open-ended about it and to do the discovery on your own. And so that's what we're going to do. If you're in a place where you can close your eyes when you are prompted to here in a moment, then you're invited to do that. And of course, if you are driving or need your full conscious awareness for any important task, please do not engage in that way. Stay present, but you could still contemplate what is going on here. You can have your conscious awareness on and still contemplate the exercise. So here we go. Get yourself settled. And what we want to do is just take a nice cleansing breath and allow your eyes to close on the exhale. And just feel the weight of your body, bringing your attention to your body, to your inner being, anchored here to where we're actually drawing the awareness away from the mind, away from the conscious mind, definitely away from the logic. In that place we all know about when I'm overthinking or when I'm trying to understand. We know where that is. It tends to feel very high up. So we drop down and hold that awareness. And I'm actually creating that offering for you. So if you want to open your heart, open your being to receive what it is that I am offering as I project it out for you, you can tap into that for yourself. Just bringing your attention down now. And we're in your own energy now. Release expectations. Open yourself up to the curiosity of what could be and how I could discover something that is actually connecting me to the truer aspect of myself. And again, we're allowing this to be fun. In a moment, I'm going to offer some prompts. We're going to say some words. Now, words are better identified as sound vibrational complexes. They are indications to energy. They are an indication to a certain vibrational system or package. And when I say each of these, I would like for you to imagine that you're connecting with the vibration of it. Again, rather than the denotation of it, rather than the letter of the law of it. Let it be just a sense or whatever kind of free-flowing way that you might tap into the energy of it, just letting it flow toward you. And as I mention each of these words, notice along the list of it whether you are more, let's say, attracted to one of the words, curious about one lights up. Perhaps one may be seeming as though it's emphasized or underlined, or it may have a mist around it, and that can be something that you're sensing in any particular way. It might be subtle, it might be more significant. It might be felt in your being in a more significant way. And as we're doing this, remember, stay anchored in your body, in your deeper essence. And so here we go now with the sound vibrational complexes of each of these. Sight, sound, felt sense, knowing, feeling, taste, aroma. All right, you can take a breath and open your eyes and come on back. And don't worry about remembering precisely what happened. But even now, if one of those is lingering as an echo, as a recollection, as a memory or remembrance, that is also a great indication. So I would love to see anyone who would like to share in the chat which ones sort of lit up for you, showed up for you. If anybody wants to share, and it's fine if you don't want to, but I'm watching if you do, and I'll explain what we're doing there with that and what it's indicating. You might already be kind of guessing about it. Now, what's interesting is that I was doing my best to play along with you, meaning that I was staying anchored in my body. And the ones that showed up, the way they showed up was very much like, I just remind myself to stay in the moment because I was like, of course, because I'm very aware of how all of my abilities function, at least to this point today, because again, I want to continue to advance my abilities. Oh, I want to see now we've got Yvette saying, hi, Yvette, so nice to see you. And Karen is saying hello from Sweden, so nice to see you. All right, and so Day said that, felt knowing. So I did say felt sense, but I think you meant when I said knowing. So yeah, okay, knowing was the one for you, Day. Awesome. Yvette too, knowing. Yeah, wonderful. And then Chris says knowing, very strong feeling with knowing. Wow. So I got chills about that. We got a lot of like big knowers in here. So knowing. Now, knowing it's interesting about all of your psychic abilities is that they kind of can flow one to another. So if a person were more dominantly clairvoyant, or at least in that moment that they are perceiving, it's coming through in clairvoyance, it is also going to be translated into knowing. But knowing, if you're getting that right off the bat here, is interesting because that probably is really indicating a strong sense of claircognizance. Claircognizance is a very interesting one because a lot of people who are claircognizant as a dominant psychic ability tend to think that they're not very psychic because they don't recognize an instantaneous knowing as like a psychic ability, but it is. And the other thing is it's so natural to you. This is really for all of them. It's so natural to you that it's often that we're not recognizing that it's happening that way because it is, we just feel like our way of experiencing is just normal and it's what everyone does. So if in that exercise, for those of you who piped up and said that you got knowing, I would say that that indicates, at least maybe it is even in this moment, a strong claircognizant sense. So claircognizance is a sudden knowing. And what's interesting about claircognizance for me when it comes in is that sometimes I will say something and I'm actually learning it at the same time because claircognizance is like a spontaneous moment of channeling. And what channeling is that it, while it uses you and it's going to operate by your filters, for example, your language and your experience, it can also bypass to a certain degree that is not going to short circuit you, but it can bypass your wisdom and your experience. And so it can, in the moment, kind of give you a boost, move beyond what you have already experienced and move beyond what you've already been wise about. But it tends to do it within a certain range of what is going to be vitalizing for you, if you know what I mean. So it's like, you eat a meal, that meal is adding to you. But if you eat, 5,000 calories in one meal, it's going to hurt you. But if you eat the right amount in a certain setting, it's actually augmenting you, and it will be in the process of adding to you. But the moment that you partake of that food, it is actually beyond your vital strength at that time. It is beyond what you have gained for health, So that's what channeling is like. It's like an energy meal. It's like a message meal. So claircognizance is like that. It drops in, and it's almost like as it is unfolding in awareness, you might actually be learning it at the same time. And of course, as it might seem to indicate, I don't know why I know, I just know. And, we sort of are sitting and waiting for the evidence to show up too with claircognizance, but you have that kind of like sense of, oh, I mean, this is it, and I don't know why I know. That's one of the things. So claircognizance, a lot of people have this, and I will say that okay, spoiler alert, everyone has clairvoyance and claircognizance in one form or another. And it may not be your most dominant, meaning the one that you use the most or that it happens the most for you, but everyone has claircognizance and clairvoyance to a certain extent in a way that I'm going to tell you in the third way that we can find out what our psychic abilities are. So now I'll just run down the list that if you were drawn to or it lit up for you, sight, that means clairvoyance, of course, sound, clairaudience. An interesting thing about sound, about clairaudience, is that let me digress. The interesting thing about any of the psychic senses, clairvoyance and clairaudience, though, sometimes people get hung up on what they believe clairvoyance and clairaudience are going to be like. Those two in particular. And the reason I think those two in particular, people get hung up on this, is because and our physical senses, sight and sound, are so important for our physical survival. What people get hung up on is that sight and sound will be as overt as our physical sight and sound senses, and then also are kind of trying to use their physical senses of sight or sound to be psychic. So if this is not making any sense, I'll try to give you an example. People that I have helped to recognize that they are very clairvoyant, that it is their dominant psychic sense, that they tend to, when they're not recognizing it, first of all, there's this comparison. Someone said they saw this, and I don't see those kinds of things. That's always a place that we get hung up if we're doing comparison, which is why Spirit, Saint Germain particularly, asked us to first go within in the answering of this question. Second of all, it is what's happening is, it's like, I've been told by some of these people who are hung up on it, they thought that it was going to be like almost on the inside of their eyelids. You know what I mean? Like a picture was painted there. Like that kind. So then you see, if a picture is painted on the inside of your eyelids, then that means you're looking with your physical eyes. Or that it's like as if you're looking at something that seems like a hologram that you couldn't possibly miss. That it is as overt as that. But it is an inner sight. And here is one way I help people to recognize that they are clairvoyant. Do you remember what an apple is? Just think of an apple. Okay, think of an apple. And then you go, okay, yeah, of course. I mean, imagine that you go in the kitchen and you're going to go get an apple. All right. And what color is the apple? Or can you recall some apples that you've had before? I've had a green one before. I've had one of those golden delicious ones, okay? That alone, even though it is a memory, that is using your clairvoyance because you're having an inner image happening. Now, I know that that there is something that is it's not aphasia. I'm forgetting the name of it. The one that is, people self-diagnose themselves as not clairvoyant because of this. It's actually a psychological disorder. It's a mental disorder, and if somebody remembers it, help me to call it. It's something that it's not aphasia. Pardon me while I look it up. That is the language disorder. Anyway, it if someone remembers, please drop it in the chat. But is the inability to create images in your mind. People read about that on the internet and then they go, "Oh, I have that." But let me tell you that that is a mental disorder, and it isn't. Okay, I'm not a licensed therapist, so I'm definitely not going against what a licensed therapist. I'm not trying to hijack their. No, aphasia is not being able to use words, which is what I have right now. I'm lost the word. Aphasia is not being able to have the actual language for something, but that's the. Thank you, Angela. Anyway, what I was saying is that if someone has this disorder, aphantasia, thank you, Day. Day got it for us. But see, it's so similar to aphasia because it says but it's aphantasia. Thank you, because of the fantasia is the part that is the visual part. So people see they go on the internet and they diagnose themselves with aphantasia. Let's just not diagnose ourselves, first of all. Let's not do that. But aphantasia is a mental disorder. And what my thoughts around aphantasia is that there is a disconnect from being able to recall or articulate or crystallize what is happening as images in the mind. So, yeah, it's not this, it's really not common, and it is a disorder. So when people go and look up and say, "Oh, I can't visualize," they are trying to use someone else's suggestion of what it's like to visualize, or they might be trying to use their physical eyes to visualize what would be in the mind. So if you could ever remember what an apple is, even though that's a memory, that is still the same mechanism. Just like, touch is just touch, So calling up a memory is actually exercising your clairvoyance. And so here is a tip for you. If you want to exercise your clairvoyance, be in one room and pick a target and visualize everything about it. So this is actually something that is used. This is an exercise to help to build the skill of remote viewing. It's also a skill that helps you to do self-initiated astral projection, both of which I teach in my program, Astral Mastery. And I also will be teaching bits and parts of it in my new intuitive development program. Stay tuned. Anyway, it's called Quantum Resonance Mastery, the new intuitive development program. Anyway, that target technique, like for example, if I'm here in my studio, I will visualize my bedroom or my living room. Or if I'm at home, I usually do it at home and visualize my studio. And I get as granular as I can and have fun with it at the same time. Like, I have a rug here. I'll imagine that I'm down on the rug and I'm looking at the little fibers and I'm exploring the different areas. I go way over into a corner or I'll stand back. That is actually practicing your clairvoyance. If you could tell me what color your living room walls are, that is clairvoyance. You're having, even though it's a memory, it is still using your inner non-physical sense of sight. So let's translate that to all of the other psychic abilities. For example, sound. Sometimes people think that clairaudience and hearing messages is, again, going to be like, there are voices in my head that I can't get away from. And that is also something that's on the spectrum, deep into mental disordering. It is an inner dialogue. It is an inner sense. Now, because people will ask like, "Oh, what does it sound like when you hear spirit?" Or what does it sound like when you're hearing, like a past loved one? Well, for me, because that's not one of my dominant ones, clairaudience, it just is an energy and I can understand the words. So it's almost like a claircognizance, but in a stream of words. That's for me. Now the other thing is that I do sense a different texture and pitch. But what does it sound like is probably a little too definitive. Like it doesn't sound like a squeaky voice. I mean, maybe sometimes it does, but it's more of a sense of how the information is coming in. Because again, it isn't like the definitive and distinctive sounds. It's a translation of frequencies that are occurring by becoming language or becoming tones or becoming song or becoming anything else that you could possibly hear. It's being translated by the inner sense of what would be sound. So that is pretty much, those two are ones that people get hung up on. And then when you're able to just adjust them to, oh, it's just like when I'm imagining something, yes, 100%. And I'm going to tell you, that's one of the things we're going to talk about, intuition or imagination, your psychic senses or imagination. So stay tuned for that. All right. The other ones we talked about were, I did feeling and felt sense, because felt sense is more just like an energy that might be translated. That's your clairsentience. But clairsentience is also emotions, you know? So that's why I did feeling, because we tend to associate feeling with emotions, but you might also associate it with tactile feeling. All of that is in the arena of clairsentience. And that's my most dominant one. I have it like a million times over in my, and the thing about clairsentience is that it tends to overlap a lot with the other ones. So if I have a felt sense about turquoise, I mean, as soon as I say what it is, I've translated it into clairvoyance, right? In order for it to be turquoise. So there were a couple of them there just to see where the clairsentience might be. And then, of course, we have taste and smell. And I said aroma because I wanted you to have like a lovely association with it. And those are very primal senses, too. And I tend to have taste or smell, and those are called clairgustance and clairaudience. Those are especially online for me when I connect with former humans who are now in spirit. And that's because they're very physical, they're very earthly. And those are very interesting because those do have a moment where it seems like they are in the environment. For me, now sometimes it might seem like a claircognizance, oh, like the scent of roses. But when clairgustance and clairaudience happen, it's almost like, oh, if it's like I smell something, wait, and then I try to smell it with my nose, and then it goes away because it's an inner sensing of it. But it turns on the response inside your body as though it is in the outer world. So those are very, very interesting. So there's an exercise and an explanation, one way that you can discover how your psychic abilities are actually functioning and what you might not be using. Play around with that, and let's get to talking about some more of those things. We're going to talk about another way that you can understand what your psychic abilities are that you're not using. And here's one that's really fun. Now, this also is a great way to maybe be able to peek in on what is an alignment for your purpose, being on purpose or being in your mission. Because what we're going to do is actually observe ourselves in the behaviors that we had as a child, the things that we loved to do as a child. And the things that we love to do as a child might indicate how our mission is expressed. Your purpose. Now, your purpose is not a job, and your purpose is not a behavior, and your purpose is not an action, but you can see the behaviors and actions that you did as a child, and they came from your purpose, because that's all children are. You're all purpose. All purpose. Like an all-purpose flower? No, that's not what I mean. And but back to who you are, what you were doing as a child will indicate your psychic senses. What I would like for you to do is maybe take a breath, if you can be in that space, to alter just a teeny bit, and imagine or recall yourself as a child. And as you were interacting with the world, how was that happening? How were you interacting with the world? Because as a child interacts with the world, they've already created the inner world first. They've already activated their inner world of psychic and imaginative and intuitive senses, and then they just involve the outer world. So you as a child, can you imagine, and there's no right way or wrong way to do this. This is in this moment, you tapping into that. Was this inner child, was this child version of you interacting with the world through being excited by what he or she saw, what he or she felt? Were they lying on the grass? Were they looking for the ladybugs? Were they enjoying putting things together and loved the way the colors came together? Were they singing songs or talking to plants and animals and unicorns and butterflies and fairies? All of those different ways that this child that you were interacted with the world. And again, this isn't about being factual. This is imagining you as a child and imagining who you were as a child and how you were playing. How does your inner child play? That, if you let that be fun, definitely don't let it be factual. Definitely don't try to make it right. Have fun with it. This will both activate your latent, if you want to call it that, or the senses that you might not be recognizing, and it'll indicate those ones that are perfectly natural for you, because your child version of yourself knew exactly what his or her psychic senses were. Well, they didn't know what they were. They just were. They just were. They were experiencing them. And so that play of the inner child is a real indicator of how you have psychic abilities and your intuitive sense of the world. Now, it's also how the inner child had no veil, had no separation between you and the world of the non-physical. And you may not remember that you saw Grandpa at the end of your bed, like some people say, oh, I've always been a medium because Grandpa came to me when he passed away. You may not remember that. It may have happened for you and you don't remember it. And I'll tell you why. Because again, like, your psychic senses are so natural to you, you may not recognize them. That kind of occurrence is so natural for a child that you don't remember it. It didn't need to be crystallized and remembered. It was just normal for a child. You may not have spoken about it because, you didn't have a lot of language to speak about things. You were just experiencing. And, or you may have mentioned it and your parents or caregivers have just thought, yeah, that's fun, whatever. Maybe you didn't say grandpa, you're saying there's a man. And they're like, yep, man, whatever. There's many different reasons, because children have no filter between themselves and the world of spirit or the world of non-physical. This is why most kids are fascinated with like nature spirits and fairies and unicorns and other kinds of what we think are imaginary. But in fact, they are real. They are true in spirit. They are true in the non-physical. So imagine what the child version of you, or if you want to think of it as your inner child, how he or she is interacting with the world and what senses are most delicious and fun. And that's a great indication of what abilities are online for you today. All right. We're going to talk about how you can identify your psychic abilities by your human design chart. And they're just right there in your chart for you to be able to see. So I'm going to pull up my own chart here in a moment, but I will tell you there's two ways. There are two ways that you can see it. And by the way, you have all of the abilities. You have all of the psychic abilities. You just may have one or two, or sometimes people have more, 1, 2, 3, whatever. You may have a few that are more dominant than others. Now, having some that are more dominant than others doesn't mean you don't have the others. I have two hands. I'm right-handed. I use my right hand a lot. Do I not have a left hand just because I'm right-handed? No, I use my left hand a lot too. But if I'm going to pick up this glass, I have it on my right side because I did that without even thinking about it. There would be a spot here for me to put it on the left, but I put it on the right. So it's how I reach for things if I only need one hand for it. But guess what? If something is heavy, or something is important, or something is precious, or I need to reach for it a little more, I'm going to use both hands. This is heavy. I'm going to pick it up with both hands, So as I mentioned, my dominant sense for psychic intuitive abilities is clairsentience. And so I'm using that all the time, and I have to fill that bucket up. If it's a heavy thing, then I have to use my subdominant, which is clairaudience, clairvoyance, these other ones. They add to your dominant one. Your subdominants are present and they are adding to, they're outpicturing, they're filling them out in more detailed ways. So the long story short here is that how do you, the listener question was, how can you recognize what psychic abilities you have? that you aren't aware of, well, if there are any that you're not aware of, you're not recognizing them. You have them all. They're all adding to your ability to perceive the world of spirit, the world of the non-physical. As a clairsentient, dominantly clairsentient, just like I need to pick this up, or I need to pick up this, and I need to pick up this. I got some different things to do. Then that is like when I'm feeling something, and I will feel that it's Archangel Michael, and I know the words, and so I'm putting it through my clairaudient centers, or I feel something and I might see a symbol, or I feel something and then I see that the person is standing on the right side of my sitter who is receiving the mediumship, and they're standing on the right side and they're on the family tree over here, and so that is giving me, first of all, I have a felt sense that it is like an uncle energy or a friend energy, and they're standing in that position. And then as I ask them to come closer, I feel them more. They come closer, and I see that they're doing a certain gesture or they're wearing something. Now, that's how things work. But sometimes I just see sudden images in my mind, sure, but I've probably already felt it first. It's just that it's all... Now, other people who are dominantly clairvoyant, they see details really quickly, and then they have to have meaning, you see? So there's no wrong way about this. And with that, in a set, I will show you and tell you about the different indications that are available in your human design chart. And so I'm going to share my own chart as the example, so as not to, like tell anybody else's business. Oh, actually, you know what? I'll share my husband's too. I am volunteering him. So here's my human design chart. So there are two ways. The first way I want to tell you about is, because it's more obvious in my chart, are the open centers. The centers that are, undefined is the better way to say it. 70% of the population have an undefined head center. And the head center is the one that's at the top, and it's a triangle with its point upward. And you can't see my pointer, I guess. But anyway, so that is the one at the top. And you see, of course, all of my centers are white because I'm a reflector. So when the center is undefined, when it's white and not colored in, then that is one of the ways that you don't have a filter between yourself and the field of energy. And let's see if I can get my husband's to turn up here. Yeah, so here's my husband's chart. He also has that center at the top that is not colored in. He has a couple of gates colored in there, the red dots. The red dots, the gates, are the other way that you can see what those dominant abilities are. And I would say that the gates are making it a little more dominant than even just the open centers. Just a little more, though. But the gates are, and the way that the gates work, and it's not all of the gates in your chart, I'm going to tell you which ones, but the way the gates that indicate psychic abilities work is that they work for yourself first, and then they can be turned outward. And just let that sit with you. I have a much deeper lessons on this inside my courses. But anyway, the ones that have, where the centers are undefined, it's like not having a filter. And so that actually works kind of outward first, and then you can understand what is for you. And if you are a hypnotherapist, because I have a lot of hypnotherapists who listen, because I am a graduate of HMI College of Hypnotherapy, and I'm an instructor there. It is actually the centers that are undefined. It's a very literal and direct way that you're bringing in energy. And then the gates are a little more inferential because you process it first. But you can make the gates, those indications of psychic abilities, work as a skill for others as well. So now, let me tell you about the gates, the particular gates. Well, actually, all of the centers are pulling in energy along the lines of whatever their processing is about. So at the top here, the head, that is sight, that would be clairvoyance, but it's also claircognizance. Same thing with ajna, the second chakra down, the second energy center. One of those gates is an indication of clairvoyant. Sorry, I'm multitasking here. This is as you guys know, excuse me, I meant to say that it is actually an indication of claircognizance. And then, of course, we have the emotional center. If you had that undefined, that would be a way that you are an empath. But then we have the clairsentient gate. So let me break some of that down for you. I'll go back to my chart. And I will begin to, if you want to take notes, obviously you can. You could look this up somewhere else, but I'm gonna walk you through it. My chart is, so yes, I have at least it's I have the unfiltered sense of everything because of being a reflector. Then the gates that indicate psychic abilities are all of the ones that are in the head center. There are 3. All 3 of those indicate clairvoyance. And one of those indicates clairvoyance and claircognizance. And the one that indicates clairvoyance and claircognizance is the one that's in the very middle. It's gate number 61. So in the head, we have 64, 61, and 63. All 3 indicate clairvoyance, and 61 is clairvoyance and clairaudience. Excuse me, clairvoyance and claircognizance. Okay? So that is the first set that we'll talk about. Then we'll go to the next set, claircognizance. So, of course, we already said 61 in the head is one of the claircognizant gates. Another claircognizant gate is 24, and that one is in the ajna, and it is actually on the same line as gate 61. So if you have this 6124 channel, that is like such, your clairvoyance is off the charts and your claircognizance off the charts. Now, if you had that whole channel, you wouldn't have, then your head center would necessarily be defined, but you would then have this strong channel and 2 strong gates. So you see, this is, before I move on, why I say no matter what, everyone is clairvoyant to some degree, because if you have the head open like I do, that means I have an unfiltered sense of the clair visual world, but I don't have one of the gates. My husband, on the other hand, has both. He has an undefined head center. Let me pull his chart back up. And he has the 61, which is clairvoyance and claircognizance, and he has clairvoyance with 63. And he is much more visual than I am. So this is what's really cool. My husband is able to do this thing that I can't do in the real world, but it's still, again, using his non-physical or his intuitive abilities, in the sense that he's not using them to perceive spirit, but he's using them to perceive and review what's in the non-physical world. So he is able to go, like he plays tennis. He's playing tennis, and then they go, "Oh, that was a close call. What do you guys think it was?" He can stop and review the tape that's in his head. I don't have a tape in my head. I can't review. I don't know what happened. What do you mean? But see, he's got that. He's got all of these layers of how that non-physical sensing is. So, okay, moving on now we have, again, 3 gates of claircognizance, 61 in the head, 24 in the ajna, and then there's another one that is in the spleen, which is 32. And my husband has that one too, so we'll keep his chart up here. The spleen is down at the lower side of the chart, and it's the triangle that is on the left as you look at it. And 32 is down in there. Now, that is one of the claircognizant gates, and what's interesting is because this is the oldest center, it's very primal, so it might even be a primal kind of instinctive knowing. We'll move on now to the next set, which will be clairsentience. Clairsentience is indicated by, of course, the open or undefined, especially the emotional center, but it's also these other 2, like the heart will center and the identity center. That's going to pull in empathic information. The actual solar plexus, which is the emotional solar plexus, that is the triangle toward the bottom that is on the on the right. That one is going to be emotional energy. So you will be an emotional empath if you have that uncolored, undefined. But then, yeah, you're going to be sensing a lot of energies with the small triangle above it, and then the bigger square that is right in the middle, that's the identity center. But especially as an emotional empath, that is the undefined emotional solar plexus. However, The gate that indicates clairsentience is gate 19, which is down here in the root. And so I have that one defined, and I also have an undefined emotional solar plexus. And besides, I have the 19 defined. I have it actually 3 times in my planetary gates. So again, it stands to reason with all of these undefined centers, as well as 3 clairsentient activations, why I'm so clairsentient, right? So there you go. There's that next one. And then we also have clairolfactance. And clairolfactance is both taste and scent, because, you know, honestly, your palette of smelling and tasting they very much overlap. In fact, you smell hundreds of things. You really only taste 5 things. So I would say it's mostly smell, but it is also translated to taste. Anyway, the clairolfactance is also in the spleen, and I think my husband has that one, so I'll pull up his chart. It is also in the spleen, and it is gate 44. Does he have it? Yes, he does. That's right. I knew he did. So again, spleen being the oldest center, very primal, and you might have a sense of things. Now, one thing. This one is also very instinctive. It may not only be about smell. It's also like kind of how something smells off. If you say that, you're actually picking it up in that primal clairolfactant way. So there's that one. And then there's actually a couple more. Oh, I should say that back to gate 19, which is the clairsentient one, there are other really amazing things that happen with this gate 19. There is a genetic predisposition for synesthesia, meaning your senses overlap, both your physical senses and your non-physical or your psychic senses. And also gate 19 is deeply, deeply connected to all of the realms. So the mammalian realm, the nature realms, and the fairy and angelic realms. So those are different kinds of intuitive abilities. But, you know, again, those dominant abilities are indicated by gate 19. We have 2 more that are connections to the realms of nature. So basically like being a nature psychic. And that could be animals. It can be, again, these fairy and nature spirit kingdoms, but just nature and all of its elements. And one of them is gate 15, which I have here. This is called the identity center, also called the G center. It's the very middle of the chart here. It's the square that's turned on its side. There's where 15 is. And then also gate 5, which is in the sacral. And I don't have that one colored in. And these are both about cycles. They're about natural cycles. And they both have a different texture of how they are connected and read the natural cycles. And then, of course, it's the natural cycles plus all of the other elements of nature. Does my husband have 5? No, he doesn't. Okay, that's right, because he has a 15, and he is a projector. All right, there you go. Let me know what you guys think of that. If you have any questions, we got like a kind of a masterclass going on here today, right? So I want to see, Alana says, are these written in stone? Can we develop regardless? Absolutely. Absolutely, we can develop regardless. And as I said, you do have all of them. You absolutely have all of them. And you know what's really fascinating is that sometimes people who are born blind their clairvoyance is so keen, and that's because they aren't distracted by physical sight. And they can, you can do like tests with them. So it's really cool that, I don't know, that's kind of a side note. But yes, absolutely. You have all of the psychic abilities. And if you don't believe me just saying that, then maybe you can believe me experientially. Because the only thing I have indicated as definitely a dominant in the sense of it being a gate is 19. Well, I also have 15, which is one of the animal psychic or nature psychic gates. But the other ones, the open and defined centers, are also ways that you can bring in. But again, they're a little more subdominant, but they would be dominant in the overall aspect of it. I know someone who is a client and a student who's a reflector. And so she also has all of those undefined centers, and she doesn't have any of the psychic gates. And it's like she has them all equally dominant. And it's really cool. It's very cool the way she works. So 100%, the spoiler alert answer to the question is, how do we know which senses, psychic abilities we have that we aren't recognizing. It is, if there's any that you think that you don't have, those are the ones you're not recognizing because you have them all. So those are 3 of the ways that you can discover what your psychic abilities are. I hope you enjoyed that. I would be remiss if I didn't leave you with this one last thing, which is so important because this comes up so much, and I'm going to have to do another deep dive video on it. But what is the difference between intuition and imagination? Or how do I know it's not just my imagination? And it comes down to this. Your imaginal abilities are a part of your psychic sensing. It's basically the way that I like to describe it. In order to contextualize what imagination is and how it is utilized, is that the phrase just your imagination was meant to say what you are picking up on, what you are seeing or sensing, is not something you need to be worried about. It is not something that can harm you. Now, God bless all of us who are parents or who have had parents who have said that to us, because it had the best intentions. But that's just your imagination. Then gets kind of coded for us when we're children and into adulthood, that imagination is false and fake, and it means that I'm making it up. Making it up is a part of the conversation with spirit, meaning you create an imaginal experience and then spirit can come into that. And the question is it helpful or not? Is it helpful for you and others or not? Is it harmful to you or others or not? Then that's when we have to say, I need to release that as a part of something that is not serving me. That it all is happening on the plane of the imaginal, meaning it is all happening non-physically. So if you want to connect with, let's say, a particular entity in spirit, create a place in your imagination where you can meet. And imagine that you're starting a conversation with that entity. And then just settle into it. And the next step is imagine what would they say. Make sure that you're keeping it, that it's going to be fun, it's going to be positive. And then imagine what they would say. And start to have this, the more that you relax into it, after a little while, as you're saying yes to this experience, you're going to go, whoa, I didn't create that. I didn't create that from my imagination. That came into the place where I perceive. So you need to be validated in this plane of the imaginal. You need to be in that. So as intuition is concerned, we feel intuition for your life. It's really a felt sense in many different ways within your body. Now, we can respond to the things that we pick up, something that could be a caution, fearfully, but there is a second step to becoming afraid of something when it is true intuition. And what I mean by that is when intuition comes in to warn you about something, to give you a caution, it's first felt as a relief. And then you can go, I had a client once who, totally obscuring this person's identity, but this client said, I had this fear that there was something wrong, that my partner, something wrong with my partner, and then came back to me later and said, it was actually intuition, because what happened was there was a disloyalty that occurred. Now, this person felt at first oh, that's interesting. It felt like a comfort, but then got, what if that's going to happen? You see, that was the second step, and it did happen. So, you know what I mean? But the first step, if you're present to it, it actually feels like a caution. So that's just when there's a fearful intuition happening. And then you can really get into the process of it. Did I really feel that in my body as a comfort, or did I imagine it in the sense of thinking of it, fantasizing, worrying? But at any rate, what it comes down to is your intuition is a comfort, and your psychic abilities are used in the non-physical plane, aka the imaginal plane. So if you are having an imaginal experience that is harmful or fearful to you, that is something that you can release. But if you're having a benevolent imaginal experience, then that is something that you can lean into, and you'll see how everything unfolds for you. This was a kind of a big, fat episode. I'm gonna say goodbye to you after I run the slate one more time. I'm going to see if there are any other comments. And then let's see. Alana had just said, oh, good morning from Australia. Yes, wonderful. Oh, Jennifer says, I'm very clairsentient and I feel energy physically. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right, there you go. Now I want to remind you that there is a masterclass, a free manifestation masterclass that is happening in a few hours from this time. I will put the link for registration in the live chat again. It is also in the description. And if you are not able to attend live, still register for it because you'll get the replay then. And it's going to be amazing. And thank you, Alex. Oh, Alex says, love this episode. Awesome. Good. I appreciate that. And thank you, Yvette. It's so nice to see you, Yvette. So there is the free masterclass. It's a free manifestation masterclass. And then I also want to remind you, because it's starting next week, and the live version of it, it is Quantum Resonance Manifestation and Magic. This actually, tonight's free masterclass is like a sneak peek for this class. And this is Manifestation and Magic. We are going to upgrade your manifestation matrix. We are going to give you specific tools and invocations that I'm going to be writing for you, which are so powerful. And if you work with people, you can actually take those invocations and work and use them to work in your own practice. I mean, like if you are a coach or an intuitive or something like that, I empower you to be able to use them in your own practice. We're also going to be doing a lot of activations for you, and we're going to do a deep dive into your manifestation frequency. So that is happening over 3 Wednesdays. And again, if you're listening at some other time, this class may very well be available to you as a streaming, as on demand. And actually, people sign up even when classes are live. They sign up for it and take it on their own time passively anyway, and which is absolutely just as relevant. As I said, when we do something live together, there is that initial container that is set, but then that attracts the second and third and fifth and 100th tier of other people who are also in the co-creative process. And also I'm going to be announcing in that that's going to be the kickoff to my full intuitive development program called Quantum Resonance Mastery. But I'm unrolling it little by little. So check those out. Oh, thank you, Karen. Oh, says, I love your channel. Goodbye for now. Good night. It's not good night for me. So maybe I will see you in a couple of hours. And at any rate, I really appreciate you being here. I just can't, I can't state that enough. Be sure to join the newsletter, get some of those free gifts, higher self meditation, the different things in there. And, I just appreciate you being here. And as I say every time, and I genuinely mean it, thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.